I'd like to welcome our next speakers. So for our 11 a.m. slot, Michelle Furr and Jonathan Baxter are going to be providing an overview of the habitat BMPs that were created by the Arkansas Monarch Conservation Partnership's Habitat Subcommittee.
Yep, I'm Jonathan Baxter. I'm the state coordinator for Partnership Fish and Wildlife for U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the Conway Ecological Services Field Office, and I know that's a big mouthful. First of all, Carolyn, I just want to thank you for your service. Thank you very much. I know Veterans Day is coming up tomorrow, so I just want to personally thank you for that, and anybody else that's on this presentation, thank you as well. We're going to briefly go over some best management practices, documents that the Habitat Subcommittee, and with the help of many others, created. It goes along with the Arkansas Monarch and Pollinator Conservation Plan under the Habitat Objective 1 Strategy 9. It was a goal to help conserve or establish and help facilitate restoration of monarch and pollinator habitat on private lands. And this was one of the ways that we thought that we could do that was through outreach and trying to get landowners an idea of how we could do that. So this is just kind of a brief overview of those documents that we created, kind of a 1,000-foot overview view. So first of all, I think what we need to do is talk about a little bit about what BMPs are. And essentially, they're just voluntary practices that we can use to achieve goals related to water quality, forestry, wildlife and biodiversity, and any other really environmental concerns that we have. And so, the way that we intend for these documents to be used is to be used as handouts at offices, conferences, meetings, even, we can give these to landowners at site visits just to give them an idea of what's involved, and maybe to inspire them and to show that conservation doesn't have to be a standalone practice. We can do this in conjunction and in harmony with the farming or the goals and objectives that the landowners have. And so, again, these are just tools to be used to direct landowners. Well, let me back up for a second. We have these documents, but the main objective is to get the landowners connected to a private lands or professional biologists who can really give them a plan. But that's the standalone goal, but these documents are just tools. So we're just going to go through them real quick. So the first one we have, and we have 5 documents established right now. This one is Habitat Establishment on Private Lands. And this is an overview of what to expect in the process of a pollinator planting. Whether it's a pasture conversion, a fescue conversion, or just taking remnant prairie or remnants and converting them back over. But it basically just gives enough information that an individual could successfully accomplish this habitat restoration on their own if they wanted to put in some time and research. But again, it's more directed at getting them familiar with the process and then in contact with a biologist. But this document covers site preparation such as burning, herbicide application, seed mix diversity. It also covers seeding methods, and recommendations of when to plant, how to plant, diversity of seed mixes. It also covers management of the habitat once you start getting it establishing, such as burning, mowing, selective herbicide use. But again, it highly encourages these landowners to get in contact with the biologist so they can get a more specific plan or more specific cookbook for their property or their project. We also created a document with a lot of help from Forestry Commission on forested property. We talked a little bit about this yesterday and there were a lot of questions about how can we take forested property and our pollinators, do they use forested property? And that answer to that's absolutely. And we talked a little bit about conditions being different now. When we look at woods today, they're definitely not what they were, historically. And so, pollinators generally prefer those open forests with a really lush, diverse, herbaceous understory that have a lot of those flowers and structures that pollinators and monarchs use. So this document goes over overstory tree thinning, including patch openings, tree density reductions, herbicide treatments, mid-story vegetation reduction, especially talking about non-native shrubs through cutting and herbicide stump treatments, and thinning and vegetation reduction is best with fire. And we mention fire a lot in all of these documents. It's kind of a common theme. And so these forest stands that are regularly burned have much improved abundance of forbs and understory, and we make sure that we emphasize that in these documents to try to promote that management and habitat restoration technique. So I guess I should have mentioned at the beginning of this talk that Michelle Furr is also going to be part of this presentation. She's going to go over the last four slides we have and the other 3 documents we have. She's a private lands biologist for Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. She's out of Fort Smith, and she's going to go ahead and take over the rest of this presentation.
All right, can y'all hear me? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, good. It took me a while to figure out how to get to unmuted earlier, so sorry. This is the first time you've heard from me. So the next one we'll be going over is pastures and hay meadows. Pastures and hay meadow BMPs are directed to give and show the diversity options for pollinator-friendly grazing and hay production. It is broad in scope to allow many alternative suggestions to non-pollinator friendly practices. It also directs interested landowners to biologists, like Jonathan has said, for more detailed specific plans to meet individual goals and objectives. This document will specifically cover grazing native pastures of forbs and grasses, such as different heights throughout the year to benefit pollinators. It will also cover fencing riparian areas and planting them with pollinator habitat, as well as covering rotational grazing. The next section is haying stands of native grasses and forbs, and is also covered is how mixed stands of native grasses that include perennial forbs are preferred over monoculture of grasses, and that adding legumes and flowering plants to non-native hay fields can also improve pollinator habitat. All right. Did we skip rights of ways, Jonathan? Or is that next? Next? Okay, awesome. All right, so the next one is going over our right-of-ways, and pipeline, power line, and roadside rights-of-ways can provide important habitat for pollinators, which is why this BMP document was created. This document covers adopting an integrated vegetation management program strategy. So rights-of-ways can be managed in a cost-effective and sustainable manner. It's also covered is mowing to support pollinators, as well as minimize herbicide use or focus herbicide use for non-natives and woody encroachment. And also right-of-way habitat establishment is covered, such as planting native grasses and wildflowers. Native plants will provide the most benefit to pollinators while improving roadside aesthetics, stabilizing soil, and increasing water infiltration. I believe this afternoon, Connie with Enable Midstream will cover an example of integrated vegetation management. So if you're interested in that, that'll be a good one to listen to. Okay, all right. I believe this is the last one. So this BMP is covering row crop farms. There are many areas of Arkansas that are owned and operated by farmers that depend on the land to make a living. And this document can give farmers ideas to integrate pollinator habitat into farming operations. For example, a diverse mix of cover crops can provide excellent flowering opportunities. Another BMP includes identifying opportunities to increase farm profitability by identifying unproductive areas and consider enrolling these areas into existing voluntary conservation programs. Also, landowners can consider establishing native pollinator habitat on field edges in areas that are frequently mowed to save money on maintenance and benefit pollinators and other insects. Lastly, at the end of this document, it will cover the limiting the use of pesticides. Yeah, and thanks for listening to this presentation. It's kind of short, but we believe these documents will be very helpful to landowners and should be available soon at the NRCS offices and online. So if you have any questions, well, I'm sure we have time to answer.
Thank you, Michelle and Jonathan. So we do have plenty of time for questions. We did have one earlier that I also answered in the chat box, but people were wondering where they can get the PDF of these papers, specifically, you know, just a few of them. So they will be released on our new website. I don't have an exact date for when that will be, but hopefully it will be within the next 2 weeks. If you'd like those documents before that, you can send me an email at lcooper@quailforever.org, and I'd be happy to send you copies. If you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box or the comment section on our Facebook live stream.
I just want to also say thank you to everybody that contributed to any of these documents. Thank you all. It helped a lot. Thanks.
Thank you both so much for presenting. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for attending our session. I'm not seeing any questions, so I think that you guys were pretty thorough in your presentation. So without further ado, I will end this meeting. Thank you all so much and have a great rest of your day.